Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and some more Crimson Desert talk. This is our third features overview breakdown, and keep in mind this is actually the last one they're doing as they announced this video. Hopefully we'll see more from the game before launch, but at very least this one focuses on life in Pywel. So let's begin. So life in Pywel, let's talk about what Pywel is. Pywel is the continent of play, a huge map that they've claimed is roughly twice the size of Skyrim's map and even bigger than Red Dead's. It's cut up into 5 major regions. As you can see, all of them have distinct themes and people. The world itself has many factions, some of which are at war based on their views. So one nation is focused heavily on technology, which is probably where we see machine-related enemies originate, the massive machine-like monsters. In this game we have 4 kinds of bosses: human, beast, steel, and sorcery, so it's very likely the steel enemies originate from this technology-focused region. Other regions then, probably one in particular from what we've heard, are averse to technology. So this creates, faction war. Outside of the factions and their dynamics like that, 4 of the 5 regions are well populated and filled with life. But the 5th region, the Crimson Desert, is considered lawless without the towns and cities, roads and structure to set it apart. In this overview, they highlight a concern of mine, that it's all well and good that regions are visually impressive and the world is big, but what happens as you travel? The towns and context matter. Are we just running checklists in an open world like many open worlds do? Or is it something different? Well, they claim the small moments are going to shape your journey, while showing us different shots of, say, little town people at work alongside these steel workers. Probably automatons, probably doing the heavy lifting for them. These bright red docks, with a giant that's casually fishing alongside regular men, or a herd of goats being shepherded across a hill out in the open. Stark contrast to this bright white food hall of well-dressed NPCs, which is clearly a wealthy location. So they've got visual themes and variety there. Let's take a look. The first major topic is the hub of the game, the Greymane camp. The Greymanes are the faction we belong to, and our story lead Cliff is one of the few survivors of the destruction of the Greymane faction. Once known for their drive to bring unity to their region, like a mercenary band that has strong and healthy ideals. And it's now our main goal to sort of reunite survivors and rebuild the Greymanes from the ground up. That's where then a camp comes in, with Will Powers, the PR lead for Pearl Abyss, suggesting this could serve as your functional hub if you want it to. But the camp itself progresses from extreme basics to higher highs. Through funding and resources, you build it up. So we see Cliff driving a cargo wagon into camp and then speaking with the trade center NPC, offering packed provisions, timber, stones, arms and guns. There's Cliff hammering away to set up this shelter for a huge pile of hay, but then we finally get to see it. Actual housing mechanics to create and manage things how you want. Now, housing was offhandedly mentioned in an interview with Powers in regards to the camp, but I hadn't actually seen any of it until now. So you see how this mud road transforms into this row of tents, and likely what's inside is up to you as well. There's other stuff here, like cooking mechanics that will tie into managing your health, and NPCs that set up shop in your camp, such as this food station, where you can buy provisions directly. If we stop and look close at what's on sale, we can see some of what this food does. The bird meat restores 120 health, compared to the barley only providing 30, but then the cost between the two is massive, because barley is said to be easily accessible. But in regards to harvests, farming produce is entirely an option. So out at some estate, Cliff grabs this corn straight from the crop, but we see in the camp you can create a farm as well as a ranch. You can work the land and the animals to produce these resources yourself. I like the idea of going out into the world, doing your thing, and coming back to this camp and regathering these resources, setting things in order, and then going on to come back again. All at the same time, maybe you could do all of this for profit, selling the goods you make and putting a focus on this. Outside of the functional side of the camp, the story aspect is there too. Finding the survivors to bring them back here, recruiting new members with the goal of reclaiming your lost home. But why would you actually build up the camp members when we finally get that information? You can manage these guys as free swords, as they're called, for different purposes. So you can send them on kind of tamer missions, like working as a contribution worker. In this case, you could send them to go build a statue, which apparently requires 4 to 6 people, will take over 2 days, and will require certain resources to do the job. But then the reward is worth it, where you're going to get a lot of money from it, and maybe other resources too, such as ingredients for cooking or alchemy, wood and ore that you need to progress the camp. You just need to make sure the people you're sending meet the skill requirements for the task. But of course, there's other missions like combat missions, like the faction war, where maybe you'll choose one side against another, but in this case we see a blockade set up by the Black Bears, which is the Greymane main enemy. In this case, you can send your fighters to siege a fortress and likely take it, which I would imagine will change the location when you go there yourself, based on what they've shown before. So the hub serves as a place to go back to, a great place to generate resources for yourself or maybe to sell. You build it up, housing exists, you can manage and customize it, and as you fill it up with trained soldiers, you can then use those to generate things for you or even affect the world. But moving on from that potential hub, if you choose to make it that, you have the towns and cities, which are more standard. These serve similar functions like buying food, stocking up on equipment, but you get unique NPCs here, like smiths for weapons or forging new ones, the tailor for armor and standard stuff like that. They also have sort of a reputation system. So there's a contribution to the region where you become well known. Cliff donates to a beggar and gains a tiny amount of XP to this region. There's also specific types of NPCs like nobles who you build up trust with after gifting, say, items. Through this you'll get quests. A variety was shown, classic combat missions, but also other tasks like delivering goods via a wagon, finding kidnapped victims, and other situations that, at least from the explanation, sound like they're created from the context of the region. So we've seen how you can free a location from an enemy faction, and then nearby towns and locations fill with life again. That opens up new interactions and new quests because of it. The little details here are cool. We see a moment where a thief intentionally bumps into Cliff and steals coins and pretends it was an accident. You can listen to conversations to find out about quests. We see other stuff like a mud fight, gambling. Later in the video during a montage, we see rock, paper, scissors with some kids, a horse race, and a tracked fenced area, some ridiculous arm wrestling where they're fully stood up for some reason, and an archery contest where you're using a gun instead, so it looks like quite the variety. On the other hand, there is the law and bounty system that exists, the other side of that reputation system. Here we see Cliff not as a saint, but something a bit more dastardly, like stealing, losing XP for that contribution stat of the region. Eventually you can turn the residents or even the city guard against you, and we see a bounty where if you make it out of that situation, you'll become an outlaw in that region, which apparently will make travel harder and you won't have the towns to rely on. There is some sort of punishment system though. We see a jail that probably resets things to a more functional state, but probably at some sort of cost. Now outside of the towns, life still exists dotted around. We know life exists, say, in the desert, where even normal lore and structure doesn't, but they show us glimpses of stuff like a travelling circus, or Cliff hopping into a hot air balloon. An interesting one seemingly is this abandoned castle, where they have this contraption with a conveyor belt that Cliff's putting back together. Of course, there's all the stuff above, the abyss ancient ruins, and familiar mechanics when you're out in the world like chopping wood, mining stone, and we know we're going to find rarer versions of that like high value ore for upgrading gear. In one of the last sections though, we get into the survival aspect of the game, starting with some info on cooking. We hear that food does more than restore health. It provides temporary buffs, increasing your overall health, spirit and stamina, maybe beyond the normal amounts. In combat, Cliff pulls up the option wheel and we see the 5 elements you can imbue, alongside the confusing flower options still, and food options you can swap between. Some provide stats instantly, others over time, so maybe you pop different ones for different contexts. But in regards to that cooking, there is a recipe system where you have to go and find them or learn them, and you get some surprising detail by looking at the meal itself. There's stuff like fishing and hunting, which by the way, during the hunting we see that ghillie. I noticed the nature icon represent that when equipped. Maybe it lasts a certain amount of time. But yeah, fish and meat, main source of cooking, you can get it through different resources and options. Plants and insects were listed as resources for alchemy though, used for medicines. And medicines, instead of healing you, seem to enhance your combat abilities like buffs. Now something new in regards to the mining was this special vision that Cliff would use to see gatherable ore. I guess that helps you separate what you can actually interact with from like a background environment. But again, special ore seems to be tied to upgrading gear. Hilariously, we also see Cliff reading a sword crafting book to do it yourself, I guess. He physically opens it and you've got this text and images to represent what he's actually learning about, which is really cool detail, but you have to hold it up and look at it long enough to actually complete the learning. And in this case, he learned about basic one-handed weapon crafting. One other cool topic brought up is player customization. That's interesting because we have sort of 3 preset characters, Cliff the main protagonist and then the other 2, but apparently you can change their appearance somewhat, by, say, visiting a barber shop and changing their hairstyle and recoloring them and that kind of thing. It's not free character creation, but it is something. But you can also customize your clothes to modify them and recolor them, as well as your mounts, their outfits and color sections too. If you're interested in dyeing, you'll need to find them, buy them, or engage in alchemy. But it looks pretty detailed. This shows a few variety of shots of different customization, which looks really cool. Now, outside of all the sections they wanted to focus on, I did notice this clip here with a horse section we've not seen. Cliff flies in from above, mounting this horse that wasn't ready for it, like a wild horse, and you start a minigame where you need to hold on using the sticks to balance your gravity forward or back based on the booking. That raises some questions about how does this work for taming a bear or a raptor, or the dragons as we've seen you can ride and use for combat. So some mysteries remain. And Powers also did say in a recent interview, certain mounts, like the dragon or the mech, will be disabled for certain story sections, so there'll probably be a very strong power source whenever we get them. And also in this section we got an update on the hot air balloon. It's extremely high in the sky at a small island hanging here in the abyss. Maybe that's how you'll reach certain islands, or maybe even initially before you get your own cloak and movement powers. But either way, that's what they showed us. It's been a lot to cover and I've tried to capture any extra info or details. So if you've enjoyed my overviews of these videos, drop a like and hopefully I can come back before launch for more reveals and any new information soon. But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.